A mirror is never just a reflection. In the occult, a mirror is also a door. It's a threshold between worlds, a blank surface where archetypes, spirits, and gods reveal themselves. But here's the danger. If you stare into it without a compass, without ritual protection or moral grounding, something else will stare back. And what steps through that reflection might not be what you hope to find. Welcome back to Magus in the Media, where myth, magic, and meaning meet the stories that we love. Episode 4 of Lord of Mysteries, Magick Mirror, marks Klein Moretti's first true initiation. Here, ritual magic ceases to be theory and becomes experience. Divination reveals its cost, not just its curiosity, and the mirror stands as the perfect symbol of that threshold. It answers in kind to the one who gazes, reflecting not truth alone, but the state of the soul that seeks it. This episode also unveils one of the most terrifying figures in the series so far, the true creator. A false god, a demiurgic power lurking behind the mirror, a counterfeit divinity demanding worship, offering visions, but binding souls in corruption. And that's where this episode speaks directly to the real world, because what happens when Selena and her friends dabble with mirror isn't just a fantasy. It's the same danger found whenever people play with occult currents without lineage, without discipline, without understanding. The modern witch aesthetic, TikTok rituals, the charlatan selling love spells for cash, the guru Gaia dabbler, the dabblers pulling random deities into their mirrors without a clue. All of them risk exactly what Klein faces here. So today, we're breaking down episode 4, not just as a chapter in Lord of Mysteries, but as a warning. The mirror is never just neutral. It's the abyss disguised as reflection. And only those who walk the path with discipline, with guidance, and with true gnosis survive what looks back. The only mercy I shall grant you, the oracle intones, is the lacerated scraps of your own soul. The story does not begin with our hero Klein, but with a false prayer offered to the oracle. A man in ritual robes crawls across the floor, trembling before the so-called oracle of the Aurora Order. His confession spills out between gasps. The Antigonus notebook, that perilous grimoire Klein stumbled upon, will not open its secrets. The text is odd and obstinate, a living labyrinth that denies the grasping hands of an order. That refusal is actually its language. In every age, the sacred hides itself from those who would wield it. Excalibur will not answer command. The Ark blinds the irreverent. Mystery closes to protect itself. The notebook's silence is not defiance, but discernment. The cult mistakes that silence for rebellion. Their failure turns inward, fermenting into cruelty. Klein and his companions become the offering, lives thrown at a sealed gate. As if blood could actually buy what discipline once earned. Then the oracle speaks. Klein is named the last lamb. The others have perished. He remains marked. The name vibrates with mythic irony. In the tarot, the fool often carries a lamb or a dog, mostly a dog, at his side, innocence walking towards the unseen. By naming him thus, the cult summons the archetype it misunderstands. They see a victim. The current of the story sees an initiate, standing on the brink of transformation. The failed disciple's punishment follows. He must bite off his own fingers, it seems. It is grotesque, yet symbolically exact. Across magical history, the hands are consecrated instruments. They draw circles, seal pacts, anoint talismans, and inscribe divine names. They bridge thought and matter, the human will made visible. To mutilate them is to sever the covenant between the body and the divine, to extinguish one's very own priesthood. The Aurora Order becomes what it enacts, a ritual dismembering itself. They call upon sacred law while violating every principle that sustains it. The body of their faith collapses under its own blasphemy, it seems, and here Lord of Mysteries brushes against real occult lineages. In the Greek magical papyri, a mirror or a bowl becomes a window to the divine only after purification, invocation, and fasting. In Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy, the Magus must harmonize the celestial, intellectual, and material worlds before any ritual can succeed. John Dee's angelic diaries record years after years of failure before a single word of Enochian was understood. The law is always the same. Revelation demands resonance. The Aurora Order imitates that structure, but empties it of spirit. Their rite is actually more like theater, LARPing, so to speak, obedience without illumination, sacrifice without sanctity. They believe power is seized through spectacle, yet mystery answers only to harmony. The Notebook refuses them because they do not yet exist at its frequency, it seems. This inversion has haunted every generation of seeker. Hermetic and Rosicrucian orders fractured when devotion hardened into hierarchy. Even today, secret teachings are sold like trinkets, sacred fragments stripped of lineage and compass. The Aurora Order gathers those fragments into ritual noise, while Klein, isolated and bewildered, he doesn't really know what's going on or where he is, he's learning step by step, begins to echo the forgotten arts. The same hands they would silence will one day trace the sigils they profaned, calling forth what they could never name. From this fracture, episode 4 unfolds. The Notebook waits, patient as a stone, for a consciousness capable of listening. The world around Klein divides not only by good and evil, but by depth, by those who mimic and those who embody. Every age births its own Aurora Order. Every seeker must decide whether they chase mystery or become it. After the darkness of the Aurora Order, we shift to old Neil's study, a scene that could be pulled straight from the Renaissance grimoires. For the first time, Klein witnesses ritualistic magic performed not as spectacle but as craft. Neil explains the logic. Low sequence beyonders can't wield ritual magic on their own. They need higher powers to answer. The first step is preparation. Items must be gathered, consecrated, and aligned. Then comes the invocation, an incantation seeking charity from the divine. Neil demonstrates with a dagger in hand, igniting his spirituality, and offers up prayer that sounds paradoxical. To quote, "I pray for the power of the lightless night. I pray for the power of the crimson, the loving grace of the evernight goddess," unquote. Notice what he's doing here. He's calling on opposites, lightless night and crimson grace. This is classic theurgical logic. Invoke paradox to balance powers to create a liminal space where divine contact becomes possible. The sacred often comes through contradiction. And when the ritual concludes, Neil's everyday problem, a debt he must repay, don't we all find ourselves there one day or another, is resolved through synchronicity. He finds the money in a wallet outside as he's walking with Klein, returns it honestly, and receives exactly what he needs. The message is clear. Magic isn't actually spectacle, it's alignment to the universal forces. It shifts probability, bends fate, but it's rooted in ethics. Then Neil drops his maxim, "Do what thou wilt, but never do harm," which echoes Aleister Crowley's famous Thelemic dictum, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law." But Neil tempers it with morality. He is saying, yes, follow your will, but tether it to compassion, freedom without harm. That's a radical stance, in contrast to Aurora Order's coercion and manipulation. Now, in real Western esoteric traditions, mirrors, crystals, bowls, shoe stones, and the like, all of them are dangerous unless consecrated under orthodox divine names. The grimoires and the Golden Dawn manuals are emphatic. You do not invoke whoever picks up. You name the divine powers, the archangels, the planetary intelligences. And without this, you risk the abyss. Even John Dee's angelic works involved weeks after weeks of purification, consecration, prayers, and fasting before Kelly even gazed into the mirror. Neil embodies that orthodoxy. He stresses ritual hygiene. Keep to the known gods, avoid obscure entities, protect yourself, he warns Klein. Never attempt to communicate with obscure entities whose motives are unknown. It's a slippery slope into the abyss. Pitch black and endless. That's not just exposition, that's theurgic law. Now, Neil models what a true initiator looks like. Discipline, paradoxical prayer, ritual hygiene, and above all, ethics. He teaches Klein that real magic bends synchronicity without breaking morality. It's the mark of a master, guiding an initiate into safe, alignment with divine currents. And in this, the episode is planting a seed, because every true initiator casts a shadow, the charlatan who has technique but no compass. Where Neil anchors Klein in discipline, will soon see the opposite, a soothsayer who parrots orthodoxy but wires his mirror to corruption. That's the difference between theurgy and sorcery, between initiation and exploitation. After Neil's ritual lesson, Klein begins to reflect on his own strange journey. He realizes something crucial. The potion he drank won't digest just by sitting in his veins. Something he actually read in Roselle's diary parchments, the letters he saw in episode 2 with old Neil. And old Neil's all like, there's no way you're reading that, right? And Klein's like, no, not at all, even though it was written in the exact language that he can read. And since it won't just digest by sitting in his veins, it requires acting. To live as a seer, he must act as one. That means practicing divination, reading fortunes, observing fate, not as play, but as embodiment. When he steps into that role, when he performs the gestures, speaks the words, and takes on the posture of a seer, the potion begins to integrate within his very being. The acting isn't theater, it's transformation. Because this acting method mirrors a truth found throughout esoteric history. In the Hermetic and theurgical traditions, the Magus does not just call upon a god, they assume the god form. They take on the voice, the posture, the symbolism of the deity until the boundary between human and archetype blur. In the Golden Dawn rituals, adepts perform the assumption of god forms, standing, breathing, vibrating divine names until they become the archetype. Even in ancient Egyptian temple practices, priests didn't represent the gods. They embodied them. The mask, the crown, the stances, all of it was ritual technology to make the mortal body a vessel. Psychologically, Carl Jung would say this is aligning the ego with an archetype, stepping into a larger pattern of the psyche so that the energy flows through you. Spiritually, it's theurgic embodiment, letting the archetype reshape you. For Klein, acting as a seer is not role-playing. It's soul-shaping. Every time he reads a fortune, every divination, every time he observes with a kind of detached clarity, the archetype of the seer imprints itself deeper and deeper into him. This is why the potion finally begins to digest. He is coming into symmetry with its name, with its imagery, with it itself. And that's the lesson, esoterically at least. Names are not labels, they're destinies. To carry the title of a seer, Klein must live as it, and as he acts, he becomes. Now, the acting method dramatizes what magicians, priests, and mystics have always known. You don't just study an archetype, you inhabit it. And once you embody it, it transforms you from the inside out. Now, we transition to Klein walking on the street. He walks by a woman and she hands him a flyer. Klein follows this flyer to inside the building, the Divination Club, a gathering that looks harmless enough, but which becomes the stage for one of the most symbolically loaded moments of the episode. Klein undergoes a tarot reading, and the card drawn for him is the Fool, yet inverted. Upright, the Fool means openness and innocence. Inverted, it warns of naivete and danger. The irony couldn't be sharper. Klein is the Fool of the story, but he is inverted, a stranger out of time, stepping into initiation with the deck itself marking his condition. And here's the deeper layer. Tarot was never just fortune-telling. From the Visconti Sforza decks of Renaissance Italy to the Golden Dawn symbolic system, the cards evolved into a language of archetypes, fixed images that map psyche and cosmos. In other words, tarot is structure. It binds chaos into symbol, turning the unknown into something that you can read. That's why tarot is powerful yet safe. It mediates the abyss through symbols. And it's why what comes next is so dangerous, because Mr. Vincent introduces the mirror. And unlike tarot, the mirror has no seeming structure. Where tarot gives archetype, the mirror gives whatever answers, and not every answer comes from the light. And this is why what comes next is so dangerous, because into this space steps Mr. Vincent, the so-called finest soothsayer in Tingen. He lectures the club on a different art, magic mirror divination. He emphasizes that like all ritual magic, mirrors must only invoke the 7 orthodox gods. His words echo old Neil's warnings. On the surface, he sounds safe, orthodox, and grounded. But the mirror itself is another matter, because unlike tarot, the mirror is not structured. It's not a symbolic system with cards to guide and contain. The mirror is seemingly raw, a surface that reflects back whatever stirs in the astral, the unconscious or beyond. And when Vincent stands before his students, speaking of mirrors, he embodies the tension between safety and danger. Outwardly, he insists on orthodoxy. Inwardly, as Klein's spiritual vision senses, something is a bit off. Something in Vincent's current vexes Klein. The box he hands to a young girl radiates unease. What looks like an innocent lecture on divination is, in truth, the doorway to darkness and the abyss. Now, before we follow Klein deeper, let's step into our own history. Magic mirrors aren't just fantasy props. They are among the oldest tools of Western ritual. The Greeks called it katoptromancy, divination by mirror. Pausanias, a 2nd century traveler, describes an oracle at Patre where a mirror was lowered into the water. The reflection showed whether the sick would live or die. Already the mirror was more than just mirror glass. It was an instrument of fate. In the Greek magical papyri, magicians polished mirrors or bowls, fumigated them with incense, invoked gods or daemons, and gazed until images appeared. Centuries later, John Dee and Edward Kelly used shoe stones, polished stones, and mirrors to speak with angels. One famous obsidian mirror, now supposedly in the British Museum, whether it was truly Dee's working tool remains debated, obviously, but the symbol is undeniable. The mirror is a portal between worlds. Now, grimoires expanded this further with planetary mirrors like Saturn for the underworld and Venus for love, consecrated at specific hours and fused with invocation. And by the 19th century, the Golden Dawn taught scrying in the spirit vision. Well, Franz Barden described mirrors as gateways, not just to spirits, but to the archetypes of the psyche itself. Symbolically, the mirror is never just glass. It's psyche and cosmos at once, a liminal surface where inner and outer worlds meet. The dark mirror is the prima materia, the black void of potential where any form may emerge. Does it sound familiar to today's world? And ritual is the safeguard, consecration, and invocation, banishing. These are not just mere superstitions, they are protections. With them, the mirror becomes a vessel of meaning. Without them, it is not just a tool, but an open wound into reality itself, and not every presence that peers through it is a friend. So, when Vincent introduces mirror divination, he is stepping into a current with ancient roots. But every tradition, from Pausanias to Dee to the Golden Dawn, issue the same warning. The mirror reveals, but it also deceives. And that's why Neil's lesson matters so much here. Never call on what you do not know, only open doors that you can close. After hearing Vincent's words and reflecting on Neil's teachings, Klein begins to sketch out his own ritual. He realizes there might be more than one way back home. Here, Klein now sees two roads. The first is the patient path. Digest the seer potion, live as a seer, act the archetype, and let the name settle into the soul, step by step, further becoming a higher level beyonder, not obviously without its dangers. The second is dangerous as well, maybe more dangerous, but we do not know. Harness the gray fog itself. If he can anchor his will to that mystery, he might carve a shortcut. But shortcuts in magic always come with a price. Poor Klein. To attempt the second option, Klein experiments with words of power. He writes, "The fool that doesn't belong to this era. The mysterious ruler above the gray fog, the king of yellow and black who wields good luck." Now, these are not casual phrases. They are names of power, epitaphs. And in theurgical tradition, names and epitaphs define the current you're invoking. In the Greek magical papyri, magicians used long chains of divine names and epitaphs to tune their invocation. In Kabbalistic and Hermetic practices, multiplying titles amplifies the force being called. And in psychological terms, this is Klein's creating an archetype of himself, both as fool and as something greater. What makes this so significant is that Klein has moved beyond repeating inherited formulas. He's not just reciting Neil's prayers or Vincent's invocations. He's crafting his own ritual language, his own tutelary. He's beginning to play the role of the Magus, not just initiate. And symbolically, this is a hinge point in the narrative. Klein is shaping the myth of the fool above the gray fog, the very identity that Elgar and Audrey will soon pray to in the Tarot Club. After Vincent's lecture, we're reminded of the double-edged nature of divination. Tarot offers ordered symbols. Mirrors open raw apertures, and with that danger hanging in the air, the narrative shifts us into Klein's most sacred space, the Grey Fog and the Tarot Club. Here, Klein is no longer Klein Moretti. He is Mr. Fool, seated at the head of a mystical table. Here, the rules of the world bend. Each member brings questions. Each seeks guidance. And Klein begins to realize that to lead, he must embody. The fog sharpens his spirit vision. He looks across and sees the truth behind his companions. Alger Wilson, the Hanged Man, glows deep ocean blue, an aether body like a tidal storm. And Audrey, Miss Justice, radiates with newfound light. Clear proof that she, too, has become a Beyonder. Above them shine constellations, the storm over Alger, the giant dragon over Audrey. Interesting. The giant dragon. I wonder why. Behind Klein himself flickers two incomplete signs, a pupilless eye of concealment and a contorting line of change. They overlap strangely, a mystery he cannot solve yet. Audrey begins. She asks, what does it mean to live as a spectator? How should I act? How can she keep from losing control? Alger answers her with gravity, to walk the spectator pathways, to live as an onlooker, calm, detached, always observing, and with heightened perception the thoughts of others are revealed. And the key, he says, lies in the name itself. Grasp the meaning of spectator, for all names hold power. At this, Klein taps the table as the Fool interrupts. You do not grasp potions, you digest them. A potion's name is not just symbolic, it is imagery, and you digest through acting. Alger freezes on the words, then he repeats them like revelation. Digesting and acting, digesting and acting. The key. He thanks the Fool, and Audrey follows, offering her gratitude. But Audrey has more questions. She asks, what would happen if an animal drank a Sequence 9 potion? And then we see the flashback of her dog, who once did exactly that. Transformed, changed forever. And he's like, well, they'll probably die. And if they don't, then they're a Beyonder. And that is just what happened. Her dog is now a Beyonder. And the Fool, his answer is quite stark. Even beasts are reshaped when the power of a name takes root. Her final question is more personal, more political. Her father is working on government reform. What can she do to help? The Fool advises her to propose the higher examinations, tests that will ensure only the capable can serve in government. Then Klein shifts the meeting. As Mr. Fool, he gives them an assignment. Seek out the missing pages of Emperor Roselle's diary. Alger is stunned. How could Mr. Fool know such secrets? Finally, Klein gives ritual instruction. On Sunday, each should perform a simple rite they already know. Pray for a good dream. If it succeeds, they can later adapt it for absence or communication. And then he shares the words he himself drafted in private. A 3-line honorific invocation. The air tightens. Audrey whispers, 3-line invocations, those are for deities. Alger agrees. If this magic truly works, then the Fool must be honored as one. An ancient, mysterious, perhaps terrifying existence. If this doesn't seem like foreshadowing for the future of the story, I don't know what does. And here's the irony. Klein doesn't fully grasp what he's done. But esoterically, he has just elevated himself into god form. In ritual terms, he has created a divine tutelary for the Fool above the Grey Fog. This is exactly how egregores are born. An egregore is a collective thought form sustained by belief, ritual, and repetition. In occult history, entire magical orders built their practices around egregores, invented god forms that became real powers. Klein, by instructing Alger and Audrey to pray to him with divine invocation, has unknowingly laid the foundation for himself to become just such a being, or perhaps something even greater. Tarot is structured, symbolic, and safe. Mirrors are unstructured, raw, and perilous. The Grey Fog is now blending these two. It looks structured, table and chairs and pillars, but behind it, Klein is improvising step by step. He's creating new structures out of chaos. He is turning himself into a symbol others can invoke. And this is where the Lord of Mysteries brilliantly mirrors the history of Western magic, because in theurgy and ritual, when names are invoked with titles and repeated in prayer, the invoked being begins to exist. Klein has just stepped into the role of an archetype, the Fool, in a way that binds him to the destiny of his club members. From the safety of the Grey Fog, the story now drops us back into the world of flesh and blood. A montage of Klein with his siblings, his sister and brother. Klein joins his sister and her friends now at a birthday banquet, but the gathering carries a hidden trap. One of the girls, Selena, has been given a gift. Klein even comments, "Oh, friends who dabble in the occult must not be very good friends at all." This gift, a box handed to her by Mr. Vincent himself. Inside is a mirror. It's not just any hand mirror, but a magical hand mirror, prepared with a private ritual. Along with it, Vincent provided an incantation to quote, "Spirit that revolves this world, the grace of the true creator, the eyes that look at fate." As Selena and her friends play at divination, the mirror activates. In another place, Vincent's larger mirror awakens in tandem. The two are linked. He whispers, "The altar has been prepared. Submit, Klein ready. Accept the cruel judgment of fate." Now here, the esoteric danger reveals itself. Mirrors are never neutral, it seems. They're always two-way. And this one has not been consecrated under the seven gods, nor framed in protective invocation. It has been wired directly to an unknown power and the so-called true creator. What should have been a symbolic tool becomes a pipeline for corruption. This is the do not do case in Western magical terms. Every grimoire, from the Key of Solomon and the Picatrix to the Golden Dawn's work, warns, never call to what you do not know. Never invoke the nameless names that are unknown to you. Selena and her friends are not initiates, not anchored in any discipline. They are mere dabblers, reciting words they barely understand, never studied, and that ignorance opens the door. In the mirror, a demon's image takes shape. Selena's body is overtaken. Her friends laugh at first, asking silly questions about love, about fate, the most innocent of curiosities, but until it's too late. The mirror shows them a nightmare, then knocks them unconscious. The demoness fuses itself with Selena. Now, this moment is a direct mirror of real-world spiritual dangers. The problem is not that ritual works. The problem is that it seems to always work. Without grounding, purification, or alignment with the divine, mirrors and invocations become parasite magnets. In occult tradition, this is called obsession, when your external forces fixates on you and feeds on your energies. In modern terms, we see echoes of it in the new agey witchy subculture, where people on TikTok and Instagram casually recite spells, light candles, or play with sigils as entertainment, buying these things off of Etsy. Strangeness. Without a moral compass or ritual hygiene, they invite forces they cannot control. History is full of such charlatans and dabblers. Groups that borrowed ritual forms but stripped them of discipline, collapsing into obsession, manipulation, or outright possession. Selena's mirror is not just a plot device. It's a critique, a warning about what happens when people mistake occult tools for toys. Now, the banquet scene reveals the counterfeit currents of Vincent Soothsaying, a mirror consecrated not to the divine but to a false power, a ritual hijacked by the true creator, and three girls, dabblers with no compass, nearly destroyed by what they play at. This is where Lord of Mysteries shows its teeth. Magic is not a game. It is a path. And without grounding, without guidance, it will consume you. Now the mirror awakens and its demoness grips Selena from within. Klein feels it even before he sees it. Downstairs at the banquet, his spirituality trembles, a disturbance rippling through the night. He rushes upstairs, cane in one hand, topaz pendant in the other. Danger, undeniable and immediate. And inside the room, Selena and her friends are laughing, again asking childish questions of the mirror. When will I fall in love? And what fate awaits me? The mirror answers each in turn, but beneath its surface, Klein sees what they cannot. A demon crouches in the reflection. When he dares look closer, he must then turn away. His sister and her friends are still blind to it. They see only a toy. But the mirror does not stay passive. It surges and Selena stiffens her expression, twisting her body, seized by something else. The demoness has entered her fully. Her friends panic, shaking her shoulders, and then finally glimpse the horror in the glass. The mirror knocks them unconscious, fusing itself with Selena's flesh. And Klein doesn't hesitate, yet he has to ask the question, ritual magic. I need all my tools. I don't have them. What am I to do? There is not enough time to call for done. I must do this myself. As he looks in the room, he realizes Selena has all the tools. As he walks into the room, he attacks with his metal cards, invoking Evernight's Oblivion. The cards coil around Selena, binding her just long enough for him to prepare a counter ritual. Here's the cruel irony. Klein doesn't have the right implements again. He isn't ready, but in Selena's room, he finds enough cups. candles. He gathers what he can and begins to improvise. For Neil, ritual was orderly preparation. For Klein now, it's mere desperation. He raises his voice in invocation. To quote, "Evernight goddess, you are the lady of crimson. You are the empress of misfortune and horror. I am your loyal guard, the shield that fends against danger in the dark night, and the spear that strikes evil in silence." The prayer ripples outward. Far away, Vincent staggers, his own mirror buckling as the power Klein has called surges against it. He pleads to his master, "Grant me strength." In Selena's body, the demoness thrashes, hair whipping like chains, binding Klein tighter. His spirituality drains, and then something shifts. Far above, we see and we hear Audrey, Miss Justice, performing the prayer. She begins the simple ritual Klein had given her. She prays the 3-line invocation. Her words meant as an exercise. Channel back into Klein at his moment of collapse. Her devotion feeds the fool. Strength floods him, and again, he breaks free from Selena's grip. Klein rushes to the ritual table and calls out once more. To quote, "I pray for the power of the lightless night. I pray for the power of crimson. The living grace of the Evernight goddess. Cleanse your disciple. Purge Selena Wood. Rid her of corruption. Keep her safe from harm." Unquote. The cup on the altar rises, glowing, drawing the corruption into itself. The mirror shatters, its fragments breaking in Vincent's chamber as well. The bond is severed. Selena collapses, freed. And then Klein, with his gun out, fires it into the glass, destroying the last traces of the mirror's hold. Now, this battle is the clash of two currents: Vincent's counterfeit magic, an unclean mirror tied to a false god fueled by manipulation and sacrifice, and Klein's improvised theurgy, invoking the Evernight goddess with sincerity, with tutelary, with ritual action, even if the tools are makeshift. And here, the deeper lesson emerges. Real theurgy doesn't depend on perfect implements. It depends on alignment and intent. Klein's invocation worked because it carried devotion and imagery, because it tethered him to a known divine power. Vincent's failed because it was wired to pure deception. It also shows the power of shared belief. Audrey's ritual prayer wasn't staged for combat, but in that moment, it gave Klein the force to endure. Faith multiplies power. That is both the promise and the danger of invocation. And as this ends, Vincent flees his room, opens the door, shaken and terrified. He stumbles into the hallway as standing before him, stopped cold, the oracle stands before him, calm, merciless. He declares Vincent has failed the Aurora Order. Vincent pleads, but there is no reprieve. Vincent is killed. Elsewhere, Klein meets with Dunsmith. He explains his suspicions. Vincent gifted Selena the mirror. Vincent was part of it from the start. Klein believes he was working with the secret order, the Aurora Order, in pursuit of the Antigonus notebook. As Klein and Dunn speak, something strange happens, and it's happened in the 2 previous episodes. A single invisible feather drifts down in the room. Neither man notices, but the audience does. It lingers, a sign of something more. Something mysterious. They continue into Vincent's quarters. His body lies dead on the floor, fragments of broken glass everywhere. In the shards, the same prayer Selena spoke of is inscribed, the invocation of the true creator. Klein's face hardens. He whispers, "What kind of evil is this?" And then it happens. Dunn's vision cracks open, feathers falling all around him, not invisible now, but pouring from the sky in a realm of vision. He turns and sees it. A being chained upside down, golden rings encircling its form. From its head, a single red eye opens and stares. Dunn freezes, caught between awe and in terror. He cannot look away from that one eye. It consumes him. The vision burns into him, and the episode ends. This vision is the unveiling of the counterfeit demiurge. The god of the world is not the source of truth, but the blind craftsman, Yaldabaoth. He creates forms, binds souls, demands worship, but he is not the true god. He is a mere parasite. The upside down position mirrors the archetype of inversion again. Light is twisted, creation itself becomes entrapment. The single red eye is an oracle's symbol turned tyrannical, all-seeing, but not all-wise. A gaze of domination. of terror. The golden rings circling its form echo angelic halos, but here they bind rather than liberate. What should signify holiness instead marks containment and distortion. When Vincent spoke of fate, when he demanded Klein submit to cruel judgment, that was the voice of the archons. In Gnostic language, archontic control uses oracles, divinations, and mirrors, not to free souls, but to lock them deeper into illusion. This is why the Aurora Order calls Klein and his friends sacrificial lambs. They are not initiates. They were just mere fuel. Their bodies and spirits are the price paid to sustain a false god's shadow. And this is why mirrors matter so much in this episode. Mirrors are double-edged. They can reflect the divine archetype of the soul, or they can invert it, pulling the seeker into the gaze of the demiurge. And that's the revelation. The true creator isn't salvation. It's counterfeit illumination, a demiurge in new form, demanding worship and consuming freedom. Vincent's failure exposed it, and Dunn's vision confirms it. From here on, Klein knows the stakes. This isn't about mirrors or rituals anymore. It's about who rules the astral. Episode 4 of Lord of Mysteries. It begins with whispers of sacrifice, passes through lessons of ritual, and ends with the revelation of a false god. On the surface, it's about Klein learning divination, playing at being a seer. But beneath, it's about the two ways mirrors work, as tools of alignment or as traps of inversion. Let's look back. Old Neil warned Klein, never call upon what you do not know. Orthodox names anchor you, unfamiliar names devour you. That is initiation. A teacher guiding a student towards hygiene, towards compass. Vincent, by contrast, represents the charlatan, a counterfeit soothsayer who gifts a mirror to a child and wires it to a false current. Neil initiates, Vincent manipulates. Klein, caught between them, takes his first step into authorship. He writes his own invocation, he acts the seer, he digests his pathway. And in the gray fog, when Algair and Audrey hear those words, they don't hear a student improvising. They hear a god speaking. For them, the fool above the gray fog becomes a true existence. This is the birth of an egregore. Klein is no longer just playing fool. Belief is now feeding him. Worship is beginning, and then the banquet. Selena's mirror shows us the dark twin of ritual. Mirrors aren't just safe toys. Without preparation, without compass, they invite anything that answers. The girl wanted to ask about love, but instead opened a door to possession. This is exactly the danger of the modern spiritual marketplace. And finally, the vision of the true creator, the demiurge bound upside down, golden rings circling, a single red eye staring. It was archontic control. That's why Klein's prayer to the Evernight goddess matters. That's why Audra's ritual matters. And that's the difference between salvation and corruption. Isn't whether the ritual works, it's who aligns with it and why. The fool above the gray fog emerges as a god form of freedom, belief, and improvisation. The true creator represents the demiurgic counterfeit, a parasite demanding sacrifice. So, what episode 4 leaves us with is very clear. Magical mirrors are never neutral. They are thresholds. They can align us with archetypes or drag us into inversions and darkness. Old Neil showed Klein the path of discipline. Vincent showed us what happens when charlatans dabble. Selena's possession, Dunn's vision of the soul called true creator. All of it warns us that ritual without compassion is not enlightenment, it's captivity. The Evernight goddess offers alignment. The fool above the gray fog emerges as an archetype of freedom. But the true creator, the demiurge inverted, false light, false fate, binding souls into corruption. And that's why Lord of Mysteries is more than mere fantasy. It's initiation wrapped in story, warning us that every tool of magic, mirrors, tarot, ritual is double-edged. The difference is whether we wield them with gnosis or let them wield us. You have been watching Magus in the Media, where stories are more than fiction. They're archetypes shaping the soul. Step wisely, and I'll see you in the next mystery. If this breakdown spoke to you, please share it, comment, and subscribe to help this space grow, because every story is a spell, and the more of us who learn to read them, the stronger we become.